Great. Welcome, new friends and old friends to this Colearn session. For those of you who haven't turned on your camera yet, please do. It would be great to see you, if not only for a moment. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, my camera isn't working.
Well, same for me. Cecilia here.
Okay.
It was working, but I can't see myself, so I guess that you can't see me either.
Oh, so it says that you, Cecilia, your camera has like a line over it, so I'm not sure.
Ah, classic mistake. Here I am.
There we are.
Thanks.
Great. Perfect. So welcome to the session. We will get started, and people who join will catch up. I'm going to share my screen just for a minute. Let's have a look. Hitting that. And there we are. So for those of you who haven't been to a Colearn session before, we are Colearn. Bella and I representing Colearn here today. And we run these sessions to bring together peers around the questions that we and you are passionate about. Today we're coming together around a story from Teresa at Folke Bernadotte Academy around pedagogy for the future. And we're going to dive into that, and I'll tell you a little bit more how the session will unfold. But first we want to take the opportunity to check in and to get to know each other a little bit. So we're going to use the chat function. Maybe you, Bella, want to drop a message in the chat so that pops up on everyone's screen.
Yes. Hello.
Hello. And for those of you who haven't named yourself with your name as your user, then we'd like to know your name, what you do, and your location, where you're calling in from today. And then the tricky question that will give us a hint, a little bit under the hood, why you are really here. So you can take a few seconds to head into the chat, and then we can have a look at that. So we have Bella from Colearn. Hi, Bella. We have Christina from Intendia Group. Why are you here, Christina? We need to know.
And Isabella.
And
Master
Isabella.
student in Linköping. That's amazing. And Saren Camilla from Södra. Welcome. And Lotta, IT consultant from Stockholm. Very passionate about lifelong learning. And Cecilia from Vinge Advokat Byrå wants to get inspired. Now it drifted away. And get new ideas. And we have a former colleague to you, Teresa. Maya. From UN, right? Yeah. And from Scania, we have Caroline. I realized that I don't have my glasses on, so I'm struggling to read. I'm like, suddenly my eyes is getting worse and worse. So please help me out, Sven.
Okay. I am 18 months younger than you, so I have better eyes.
Exactly.
We have Numi from Handelsbanken, get inspired, learn from others. Lina from Bandskyddsföreningen, hello. Interested in pedagogy and how to develop ours. We have Christina calling in from Stockholm, curious about Colearn, want to get inspired. Teresa, very curious about the perspectives on learning. We have Elizabeth coming in from North Carolina in US, always trying to learn and bring resources into and research into courses and future teachers. Jenny, a consultant, skipping along. How to create a festival as an arena for learning. Ooh, cool. As you see, loads of different perspectives, a few different locations, and feel free to scroll through this and see who your new peers are, and take the opportunity to note down the names. We can also share this little chat afterwards. Oh, and then a group from Arbetsförmedlingen. Hi, Jimmy, Annette, Lena, Felicia, Kina, Emma, and Petra. Nice to see you. So that's in terms of check-in. Great. We have some themes running on inspiration and new perspectives, which is perfect, because that is very well aligned with our intention and purpose for today. Because why we host these sessions is to support each other with inspiration and perspectives to modernize and accelerate learning in the flow of work in our different contexts. And desired outcomes from today is that you will walk away with this. New perspectives and inspiration. So we hit the mark there on expectations, but also connecting and sharing with peers. We'll get an opportunity to actually talk to each other in a bit too. And we want to support you to capture learnings from the perspectives and inspiration you get, so that you can set some actions of how you want to take that further. A little bit of setup. Camera, we already told you, it'd be great to see you. It makes it that much easier to connect and to for Teresa and us to see your nodding and smiling faces, but also when you go into smaller groups. Microphone, be ready to unmute so we can hear you. That be whether you have questions or things you want to share, but also when we go into our little groups. Use the chat that you would just try it out now, and bring in thoughts, questions as they come. Bella will be, me and Bella will be kind of manning the chat, so we'll respond there directly, or we'll bring it up to everyone. We'll use something called breakout rooms, a mini little feature on Zoom here, where we're going to send us off into smaller groups to process the inspiration and perspectives, and have little group conversations. We're recording the session for those who cannot join, but also for you to watch it back. But we're not recording the little group conversations, just so you know. That's just for you and your little group. And then listen to learn. And I think you're already coming in with this mindset, but we're coming in from a lot of different perspectives and industries and contexts. So some of this might be directly applicable, but other things you might need to have an extra think on: what can I learn from this and how can I translate it into my context? So look for the obvious connections and challenge yourself where maybe there aren't obvious touch points. As a personal tip, take notes. Whether you do it digitally or analog, it's a great way of capturing your train of thought and being able to follow the pace of the hour. Yeah. Anything else we should say, Bella, before we start?
I think we're ready to start and introduce our guest today.
Yes. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then maybe while you can now start sharing your screen, Teresa. While you do that, I'll tell you a little bit how we know Teresa. So we got in contact with each other last year, and Teresa will tell you more about herself and what we do. But we've had the pleasure of collaborating and being part of the journey that Teresa and Folkavärden Academy is on. And we are genuinely inspired. And that's why we wanted to invite you in here now, Teresa, to share your journey, perspectives and experiences and learnings from that, so that we can make that inspiration also available to others. So with that, maybe hand over to you.
Thank you. Oh yes, and it's been really, like you say, a journey that's been going on for several years in FBA, and now recently, when we had the opportunity to work together with you, it's so exciting to be here. And like I said earlier to Sveinung and Bella, I'm very glad to have this opportunity to meet you all, and looking forward to to the discussions and reflections later, I always think I learn a lot of new things when I get together with other colleagues and new friends. Yes, my name is Teresa Wiklund, and I work as a senior coordinator of pedagogy in FBA, Folke Bernadotte Academy. And I will start talking a little bit shortly about who we are at the FBA. And it says here, this is what we do, building peace. And the Folke Bernadotte Academy, it also sometimes can be confusing because the academy, it makes people think about the academy, but we are actually a Swedish governmental agency. And we're working for peace, security, and development. And as a part of Sweden's international development aid, FBA promotes peace in conflict-affected countries. And we offer training and advice and conduct research in order to strengthen peace building and state building. And we also deploy civilian personnel to peace operations and election observation missions, primarily led by United Nations, European Union, and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. But FBA also offers trainings and advice, advisory services, and tailor-made upon demand from states, organizations such as EU, UN, and OSCE. And we also offer some open courses for individual applications working with peace and security. And so this is why I will focus mostly on our trainings and what we do, since we will talk about the pedagogy in it all. But just to show you a little bit of the thematic areas that we work in, it's the thematic areas of expertise, and we run training on all of these different topics. And this is all important components in peacemaking, but it's not just as much, it's not just only about that, but also about preventing violence and working for sustainable peace. For example, if we look at the rule of law, it's about also state building as a way of preventing peace and good democracy. But I will not talk much about these specific topics, but go on to our trainings and the pedagogy. And since we work with a lot of trainings in these different areas of expertise, FBA also puts a lot of effort into our pedagogical profile and the development of effective methods for learning. So this is a crucial part in reaching our goals and our outcomes. And the pedagogical profile is centralized in the agency, and it contains 3 simple principles. And it's about the FBA conducted trainings, that they has clearly articulated learning objectives, that is, the training is learner-centered, and also that it supports participants' awareness of their own learning and reflection. So we don't want this to be policy-heavy and bureaucratic, but we want and commit to really do this in our trainings. And we don't centralize the course design itself. That process in FBA is up to each program to design with its pedagogical principles, but also the thematic areas of expertise that we work in. And here you have some pictures from our trainings, a little showing a few of our participant-centered and learner-centered methods. And you can also see Sveining there in the right corner, who's been working with us with our internal trainings as well, and giving us inspiration and also new tools for active learning. So we also have a lot of these internal trainings that is included in our own capacity building when it comes to using and applying pedagogy and designing with that in our trainings. And I wanted to show you this as a timeline since it's been a journey with the implementation and development of pedagogy in FBA, how we've been building the pedagogical capacity and a bit of a time perspective from where we started some of our activities that we're still building on and developing from. So it's a little bit of the needs and driving factors and activities in FBA. And I put this death by PowerPoint outside the timeline, because I would say if we would do that in our trainings, then we wouldn't use our pedagogical skills at all. So instead, I focus on the first big commitment we had in FBA, and that was when we started to commit to the pedagogical profile with these 3 principles that I mentioned. And it was a start where we had the general director and management team that decided that all staff were responsible to apply the principles of the pedagogical profile in the training. And also, oh, let's see, I have a little technical challenge here. Oh, there it is. Yes, so the leadership was very important here. And we offered internal trainings on the FBA pedagogical profile, and the management participated early, and everyone were committed to participate, to ensure to develop the pedagogical knowledge and skills and to apply it in our training. So the management and the leadership was very important here. And we continue to run the internal trainings on the pedagogical profile. And then we still do, I would say, to build knowledge skills, but also we have this internal support. Me in the role as a pedagogical coordinator is of course there to also support and be able to give advice and support our different programs and units depending on their needs. And then after this start with the implementation of the internal training on pedagogy, we also did an extensive evaluation on the pedagogical implementation of FBA, and it identified that a lot of innovations were made in the programs, out in the programs and in the units, and there was a lot of learning we could benefit from sharing experiences and innovations between units and programs to avoid the silo effect and also to continuous learning and our own capacity building. So this was a way to take care of these innovations and experience and also create psychological safety that we created the internal lessons learned for, where we really focused on sharing challenges and mistakes even, and also innovations and successes that we could build on in our pedagogical capacity. So we also have a common result-based way of working in FBA, and this really aligns with what happened next in the pedagogical development, because 2019, this was where we started working together with Colearn, and we also started this collaboration to do a needs analysis for FBA and how to include information and communication technology rather than just separate it in our training and pedagogical skills. So how we could increase our capacity to develop flexible learning in our trainings. And from this start and needs analysis, climate change have also been a driving factor, because we have a work group, and as many of us facing the climate change, we have to look at opportunities and the way of working that can decrease our flying. So from the result and the work during 2019, we were introduced to the hybrid pedagogy from Colearn. And it aligned well with our result-based way of working. So it was an opportunity where we saw that this method could create trainings when content, format, timing, places, and technology, and pace. Everything that could be adapted to the individuals and the group's needs. And this all to aim to achieve to behavioral and institutional change. So this method really made us very inspired to continue, and since it aligned well with our result-based way of working, that is where we stand now, and what we also continuously working on. So a little bit of what's going on right now is actually how we are planning to do this pilot course for the gender advisor course that we have had. It was an opportunity for us to try to implement the hybrid pedagogy in a course of our own. It's based on a course that we've been running for many years, and we had an in-depth evaluation. So this was a chance for us to continue working with the Colearn, and also get to meet the feedback that we have had from this course. The last course we developed was with blended learning, but the feedback from the course coaches said that we could use more in-depth work before and after course and maximize learning. So we saw that the time we're using face-to-face could be more useful if we would do some of this learning exercises and some of this learning before the course, so we could focus more on skills and building face-to-face skills and exercises when we meet. And the expectation is to gain more practical knowledge on how to design effective learning with hybrid pedagogy, including different pedagogical tools and blended learning. And we also have experience with coaching, using action plans, individual tasks and assignments, but also want to better incorporate these elements. And people request more information and times and skills, but also seems unable to commit to a 2-week course. So this is a take that we want to take on this course, to actually change the time perspective and also make the learning more flexible with the help from the hybrid pedagogy method. But I'm going to come to my personal reflection on this journey as well. I think as a pedagogical coordinator, I usually now joke with my boss about this, the deputy head of unit, that my first expectations in this role in FBA to work as a pedagogical coordinator, I said to her that I am worried because my role is so lonesome. I am the only person working in the function of pedagogy, and I'm placed on our headquarters in Sandö in the northern part of Sweden, quite far away from our Stockholm office. And today I can laugh about that because it's been nothing such as lonesome. It's been quite the opposite. And it's because I was so focused on how I would reach our goals and would be able to create the results that I forgot that the content is the method and the method is the content. And in this process, it's been the results that we see are really like the sum of all of us working and contributing together. So lead and coordinate the process is a lot about having close contact with the colleagues, exchange with colleagues, listen carefully and to everyone, And it's about serving and collaborating just as much as leading and coordinating resources and set new goals. So my learning from that was you need to have good friends, especially if you live in the countryside. And I think the attitude in the agency, it's been an important factor for this journey and what results we can reach, because it's been very beneficial for the pedagogical development to have management and general director who have been talking openly and encouraging that we should not only focus on our success, but also to be brave and talk about our challenges and mistakes, to point out continuous learning and reflections in our everyday work. And that relates very well with our pedagogical profile and lead us into creating this psychological safety that I mentioned earlier. So this has followed a lot during the last years, talking about our one of our most powerful tools for learning, and that is feedback. Not only in formal learning, but how we can use it in our everyday work. We are communicating this with a metaphor to perceive it as a gift, and that we use it in our internal forums, such as unit meetings, to learn about how we can go on with this and practice feedback as well. And that has given the pedagogical development a good soil to grow in, and we are still learning, and the hybrid pedagogy is something that we are very curious about. And what we hope that this pilot that we are now working on will give us is, of course, a good example of how we can design with the information and communication technology from the very beginning to integrate it just as other pedagogical tools, and also to use it in other courses where we are developing, like gender and leadership courses, so that we can feed knowledge in from the gender advisor course that we are running the pilot in. And this timing was actually perfect because we had this chance to rely on the extensive evaluation we had done recently for the gender advisor course. So I think I have spoken enough. It's a lot to say, and I want to give so much information, but I think I'd rather leave it open for our further discussions, and if there is any questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Teresa.
Thank you.
Would love to give space for anyone to ask questions about Teresa's journey or FBS's journey. If you have sit with any thoughts about how they've been working, what they've been learning, please go ahead. And you can post, either you can put on your microphone, or you can post a question in the chat and I can read it out.
I have a question verbally, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you, Caroline.
Yeah, cool. I don't know if I missed it in your presentation, but and probably I did, but how would you define this hybrid pedagogy? What's the definition of that?
Yes, thank you. That is true. I should read it as the suggested principle that we had, because since we're working with this pedagogical profile, we want to keep it to simple principles so we can apply it and work to actually do it. And then another learning from this is why we would like to keep it like that is also to, since the design process is decentralized, that the programs and units are working with the design, we don't want to keep the limits too tight, but rather also have it open to follow important principles, but leave available space for creativity. And hybrid pedagogy is And now I ask Colearn with Sveinung and Bella, of course, to correct me, because they were the ones helping us to formulate this. But we see it as the method to create training when content, forming, timing, and places and technology and pace can be adapted to the individuals and the group's need and conditions, with the aim to achieve behavior and institutional change, like the capacity development. And this is in an integrated and relevant way based on learning objectives. And why we articulated it like that is because we also have these learning objectives that we are using as one principle to structure and work with trainings, but also a way of putting pedagogy in a method where we can work with capacity building and see change for not only individuals, but behavioral change in groups and also in institutions. So we saw this as an opportunity to actually widen and broaden the perspective of the pedagogy, and not only working towards learning objectives and the output. So I think that is the best way I can explain it from our perspective, but maybe I should leave it to Bella and Sveinung if it's something that I missed.
I don't think you missed anything. I could add another perspective. It's the hybrid learning. It's about looking at learning as something that is happening all the time, not just when you are going to a specific training or into a classroom or into an online learning space. And then how can you design and support each individual to learn in the flow of their work? Meaning, how can you integrate learning and support learning to happen in the flow work? And that's what that principle is sort of supporting to guide towards. Instead of separating learning, integrating learning into flow of work, or whatever reality they have, life. Does that make sense to you? Do you want to ask more questions about the hybrid pedagogy principle, or what it means? Or should we take more other questions?
I just reflect that it sounds a lot like continuous learning
Yes.
to me.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what we mean then.
Yes. It's hybrid pedagogy is how to design for continuous learning.
Okay.
It's a method to help you to design for continuous learning.
Then I got it.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have more questions?
Sorry,
Mercedes, are you saying something?
Yes, I have a question regarding, you talked about that you were doing coaching and individual tasks, and I would like to hear your experiences with that. How do you measure success in these cases, and what's your experience?
If I heard you right, you said the coaching and the individual tasks. Yes, I think it's something that a lot is similar with the hybrid pedagogy in how we've been working in this result-based work, and cooperations and so on. But the hybrid pedagogy has helped us to put it in to design, like Bella described, and also putting a pedagogical perspective on the activities that we've been doing, and not separate it from like the learning process, as if learning would be the output after you finish a course and you look at the learning objectives, but also integrating these type of activities into design and the method. When we've been working with this type of coaching or the individual tasks, and sometimes we've been working with this kind of action plans that individuals are doing themselves during the course, and also working with what we've been calling like follow-ups and following up according that, and having sometimes individual coaching with mentors, and other times it's been also gathering groups after a first step of, let me call it the face-to-face training, to also continue working according the action plan. But I think that we are turning the how should I say, the perspective with this type of method to also integrate that and perceive it as not separated from learning, or learning not separated from what's happening out there with the action plans. So yeah, I think that could be if that's answering your question, some examples like how we've been working with our course participants with action plans and coaching.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm interested in what has been your best experience when it comes to getting the whole organization working, and you said get rid of this silo way of thinking. What has been your best experiences, or the best design, or the whatever you want to tell us around that? I'm very curious about what are your best examples?
Experience with the well, since my time in FBA have been for 3 years, I can see a lot of the work that's been done previous to when I started working in FBA is of course also very, very important. I think some of the most important experiences that I still see in the work process, but that also happened earlier from when I started working with this implementation, I would say to get the leaders to actually commit to it, but also participate in the internal trainings themselves. It was really an important step that I can see also from history, that they were really committed to this and convinced, and started talking and also doing their follow-up in their own units and programs, and also to have a open discussion with leaders about this way of looking at our own culture with the feedback. And I mean, a lot of these ideas are actually, I mean, coming from the organization to the pedagogy as well. So it's really been a fruitful collaboration there. And then I think it's been really, during the process, it's been possible to follow, like when we now have reached a point where the majority of the organization have been taking part in this internal trainings that we committed to do, to actually understand and know to apply and exercise how to apply when we're committing to this pedagogical profile. And that has also been a shift, and that is when we've been starting to recognize that we have reached a point where we should actually continue to another level, and also are ready to take on some of these strategical levels in pedagogy. So I think that have been some important learning examples for me. If I answered your question.
Yes.
Or,
absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and another thing I haven't mentioned, but it maybe relates to a little bit of what you were asking as well. I can just add that all the FBA trainings are, we are evaluating them, and they are supposed to be gender mainstreamed as well. So we are very careful about gender mainstreaming our trainings. And me coming from the pedagogical way of looking at it, I have often thought about active participations among participants, but I really haven't done this type of using sex aggregated data and looking to the content with this gender lens, and also looking to different needs. And also when I see everyone should actively participate, to have a gender perspective on that. Do we have different needs, or do we have among men and women and boys and girls? Is there anything we can facilitate to make sure that we also work to create equality in our trainings? Everyone have room and space to speech and so on. So I think that has also made a parallel track to the pedagogy that I have been working very close to when we are doing this integration process in FBA.
Teresa, we have a follow-up question from, let's see, Anna. She asked, hybrid is a mix of things, or like a dual opportunity combination, isn't it? Like electricity and gas. So what is hybrid a mix of? I'm wondering if you would like to give your perspective on the definition of hybrid, and maybe compared to, for example, blended, and why it's called hybrid, and what is it a mix of?
Yeah, well, I would say it's also this type of strategical learning, when we also look at hybrid as the groups, the participants, and the format, and these different components, not only focusing on the technology or not, or if it's online or offline, but we're including this whole process, and also looking further than like something important you noticed and actually showed us, was how we also were thinking of courses as more face-to-face events, like similarity, like it was a similarity to us, but this actually make it possible to make it more flexible with all these different components and strategical for behavior change. And yeah, but I think you can probably add something more to that, Bella, from the hybrid pedagogy definition.
Sure, I can. And maybe Anna wants to, if you have a what do you say, a picture in your mind, you're also welcome to give your perspective. That would be fantastic to hear. So feel free to put on your mic if you want.
The picture I have in mind is my car, who is a hybrid.
Yeah.
Well, electricity and gas. I can switch between the two. So I was trying to capture the hybrid thing.
Yeah, find a
in
metaphor.
A more simple way. A hybrid of mix of what?
Exactly.
And
yeah.
I still actually find it hard to capture it.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. So the main thing, as Teresa was telling, it's very easy for us to get stuck in seeing learning as something happening either face-to-face or online. But still we're stuck in the format of it being start to end, intensive during 3 days, or go into a classroom digitally in an LMS or whatever. But if we break it down, if we break learning down, unbundle it, we have lots of different components. So learning happens, you have reflection, you have collaboration, you have inspiration, you have maybe coaching, you have application, practice, you have lots of different things, right? And
sounds
then
like integrated learning to me.
Yes, you could say that's a great word to also use, integrate, because that's the aim. The aim is to integrate. And how do you integrate? You unbundle it, you look at what is it that they need and where can that happen? And that's when you get to hybrid again, another level. It can be at home, it can be in the meeting room, it can be by their desk office, it can be in a classroom if you wish. but it doesn't have to be the typical formats and places that we usually identify when we look at learning. So and the whole hybrid method, it has like a process where it helps you to break everything down, and so that you can do the hybrid combination of all the different components. But integrated learning sounds like a very good association, or another word for it.
So I guess that would mean a hybrid of working and learning, or
that too.
Or many components. Thank you.
Thank you for lifting when you don't feel like it makes sense, or if you have more questions like that, or more curiosity about Teresa and how she's been working, please go ahead. And we have one from Camilla. You mentioned leaders, and that is what that it was important to bring them on board. What are the other activities that you've done to influence how learning can be part of everyday workflow? Assuming you are not being part of organization that everyday work and responsible for how operation runs. Yeah, you're not responsible for that. So
no, that's true. But to just give a few examples on how we can do this to influence how learning can be a part of everyday work. Yeah, that would be, maybe it could be compared to what we do when we use our unit meetings. And from this commitment to the pedagogical profile, it's of course to aim for effective learning in our trainings, but also that we say that this could be also used in other areas of work or in other activities we do. So this has also put a bit of a pressure on us to use it in our unit meetings, program meetings. When we are doing internal presentations, we have had the opportunity to go from this commitment to actually asking for, but what are the goals or what are the learning objectives for this, if it's a meeting when some learning or information should be shared, and having an opportunity to also ask for, can we do this learner-centered? So we use this type of activities in our workflow to be an arena for us to exercise it, and also have an opportunity to try out new methods and so on. So I think this have also been a bit depending on this commitment, where the leaders also have taken a big role in this, since you were noticing that I'm not responsible for how the operations run myself, or how we do the management in the organization. So it also have been a great effort and work, where the commitment from the leaders have been very important. And then I see there was another question as well. I don't know if you, Camilla, think I answered your questions. Otherwise, I hope you can just tell me.
I think you did. I asked because it's a struggle that I have myself. It's like how to reach out, even if we have the idea of doing making components that can be used across organizations in all different types of contexts, but how to create the commitment.
Yeah, I really agree with you. Like the commitment to actually have it like a duty, but also going from a duty to actually having the motivation for it. I think this type of like implementing it and not separating it to, for example, trainings, that have been a useful way for us to actually make it happen. And also we've seen the effect when we do it in this internal forums. People also start to contribute and they experience it and like to come up with new ideas.
what I thought about when both you and Therese, Bella talked about it was that you could also call it organizational learning. So going from just individual learning to bring it into teams, but also the whole organization moving.
Yes.
Yeah, I really agree. And I also think, I don't know, I would be curious to hear from you also when we're having reflections, if any more of you are working with this type of internal lessons learned forums or experience exchange when we learn from our colleagues. I think that forum, we haven't had that in a structured way with continuous forums that everyone can depend on, that they will come up. But now, during these years when we've been doing that, I also think that have been a chance when we also get the ideas up and people are there to contribute and picking up from each other. It has been very effective for me in the role as a coordinator, because a lot of this exchange happens in this lessons learned forums that we then encourage to use when we give examples, like we can do this in unit meetings, or when you're having an internal presentation for the organization, or whatever it can be. But yeah, I'm very interested to hear about this collegial learning as well from you.
We're starting to get closer to 3, and then we have a question that came up 3 times, I think, and it's about the 3 principles that you mentioned, Teresa.
Yeah.
Which one are they? And
exactly. Yeah, I see there was some suggestions. Yeah, and the learn it's that our principles are that the FBA conducted training should have learning objectives, and it should be learner-centered, and then also support awareness of your own learning, such as reflection. We don't have feedback as a principle, but I would say if we will have a 4th principle, it would probably be feedback. And now the hybrid pedagogy in design will also be a way of actually developing and working with a continuous development of pedagogy. But these 3, the learning objectives, learner-centered, and reflection as support participants' awareness of their own learning, and how we apply and the learner-centered pedagogy in trainings. I think we talked a little bit about this from what you mentioned about the action plans, but we work with learner-centered training, such as making sure that we also use learning objectives that we align with the activities that we design with. So it can be, learner-centered methods can be both including recap exercises. It can be learner-centered with discussions, different type of activities like scenario-based cases, and it can also be learner-centered in the hybrid pedagogical perspective. It could be something that participants do in their own work and bringing their experience back for reflection and for discussion. So it's actually about making sure we don't only work with the information, but actually letting the participants be the active participants in their own learning process, and to acknowledge that the process and the learning is happening inside here on the participants. So, and I would say that is kind of the heart of the pedagogical profile. Even if it seems so simple, I've noticed that it's very easy to really want to hold on to the information-centered perspectives And even when we do long trainings, it's about changing a way of doing it. So I think that principle is probably one of the most important to actually make the pedagogy happen.
Great. So I think we managed to capture most of the questions. If you got more questions and want to follow up in different ways, we have a few options of how to do that. As you will have noticed, we did not go into small group conversations. If you didn't notice, then yeah, well, hopefully you noticed. But stayed in this room. You've gotten a little snapshot of Teresa's world, driving shift from traditional to more integrated learning in a Swedish government agency. If you want to follow up more with Teresa specifically, we'll share both the presentation, the slides, this recording, but also your contact details, Teresa, because there might be some specific questions that people here want to dig deeper into. And I want to say thank you for diving in and to taking responsibility for asking the questions that you needed to ask, and to lifting perspectives on ways of looking at it, and highlighting that it might be different language, it might be different ways of working with this in your context, which is a big learning, I think, whenever talking about these things. We want to do a checkout, but before we do that, we want to also say that feel free to get in contact with us if you want to learn more about what we do and the other things we've got going on. If you would like to be a guest in one of these sessions, also let us know. We'd love to learn more about what you're doing and what you're learning about learning at the moment, and have a conversation with you around it, similar to this. But for now, I want to take the opportunity to check out, and we're going to do it on a question which should suit us all. So in the chat, feel free and please share one thing that I'm curious to learn more about. It can be something that you sat with when you came in and that's been reinforced now, or something that came up in our conversations. So as a way of checking out, please reflect on that question. If you're finding it hard to answer, maybe even more important to answer. So what would you like to learn more about right now? See a couple of people typing. Figure out how to involve the learners, managers systematically, and get it within the normal learning culture. Integrating it properly into the way of working. The key to convince leaders to focus on continuous learning, hybrid learning, and the importance of continuous feedback and reflection. Yeah. Curious to learn more how to get their stamina to introduce new ways of learning. Yes.
Caroline, we have some interesting research that could be good arguments for those managers. So just reach out and I can share that with you.
Continuous learning and sharing across different organizations, how to start your learning process in a small unit close to the field where you can actually doing your place work. Start small and increase the impact, collect good small stories. Yeah, the importance of storytelling when driving change. I got to run. Bye. Learn more about how to create habits to promote my own continuous learning. Yeah. Want to learn more about experience compared between children and adults. Yes. How to integrate business solutions and learning solutions and better support learning, continuous learning. Great. Thanks for the session. Concrete examples of how to implement this pedagogical perspective in the everyday work. Yeah, we can follow up and share some things around that, some thoughts. How to improve pedagogy to have people take more ownership, get improved accountability, entrepreneurship and learning. More about different ways of getting more learning centered instead of information centered, and how to implement that. Leadership and learning. Fantastic. Thank you. And that, I love that checkout too. It again lifted perspectives on what you're sitting with, and we would love to continue the conversation if you're like a sparring partner or conversation partner. So feel free to reach out, and we hope to see you in a future Colearn session. And we'll leave it at that. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.